everyone. You are listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast presented by Great Railing. I am Jordan Hall, and as always, I am joined by the wonderful Taryn Hatcher. Taryn, we have another contract extension. Joel Farabee is going to be in the Flyers' future for many more years now. The next 7, he will be playing out the final year of his entry-level deal this season, and then he just signed a new 6-year, $30 million contract extension. Pretty impressive deal for a pretty impressive young kid, 21 years old. Taryn, what did you think of the contract? I think it was deserved, and I think it was great to get him locked up.
Yeah, I was surprised. This was another one similar to the Brassard contract where I'm like just sitting there, and it was funny, I did have a little bit of a heads up that something was going to happen, but I didn't know exactly what was supposed to happen because yesterday, behind the scenes, I was supposed to interview Wade Allison in one-on-one yesterday about development camp, and then I get a text that's like, you might want to hold off on trying to do that interview. Something else is going to happen. And I'm sitting there racking my brain like, what could they be doing? Like, they don't need to sign anyone new. What could this be? Carter's extension's already done. Like, what could this even be? And then it's Joel, and it's 6 years for a 21-year-old. I was kind of shocked, but like you said, I mean, this is if Joel continues to grow the way he did from year 1 to year 2, the Flyers will be in a very good place with him come like 2-3 years from now. But I think this was a good one to get done and get out of the way because Joel did perform so well last year. And I think he is someone they would like to see as part of their future long-term. And also, I hate to think this way because I prefer to keep all the good guys in-house, and Joel's a good guy. But you add that contract, you also get a little bit more room to, deal him potentially if there's a team who wants a young guy with long-term kind of contract terms, which is, I'm sure, not what Chuck Fletcher is thinking, but the reality situation that's there. And like I said, like, Joel's just a great kid. So you love to see this come together for him. He doesn't have to talk about it all year or next camp or whatever. And I don't think he's not one of those people who gets a big deal, gets a big opportunity, and then takes his foot off the gas. Joel's just not like that. He certainly hasn't been that way since he got to the NHL or with Team USA or at Boston for that matter. So, I think it's something where showing faith in Joel incentivizes him. It doesn't basically like give a kid everything you could want and more, and then he doesn't do anything. I'd be shocked if that happens. So, I mean, win all around. I don't know about you. When the news came out, I just didn't, I'm like, Chuck's just trying to get everything done this year. If he could get everything done right now, he would. But, that's Chuck for you. Just the guy never stops working.
Yeah, Taryn, how many times have we thought like, okay, that should be it for the offseason. That should be the final thing on his to-do list. And then boom, he's coming out with, Sean Couturier extension, Joel Farabee extension, Derek Brassard. Like, it's just funny how that works. He is working nonstop. I think that guy deserves just give him a long weekend or something. Let him enjoy himself before the season's here.
And he's doing it. It's like we're getting into the most busy time of his year too. Yeah. Like the season is about to start. There's all kinds of, I don't want to bring down the mood, but there's all kinds of like changing situations with the COVID of it all and everything else. Like you'd think the guy would want to take like a weekend in golf or, just hang out. And he doesn't. He just wants to sign contract extensions. So,
that's all he wants to do.
Yeah, go figure.
Sign deals.
That's all he cares about. Yeah.
And I even saw he was even on the perch a couple of times watching Flyers prospects at development camp. So he was even looking at guys that are well down the road from reaching the Flyers. So, yeah, he's doing it all. And, yeah, Taryn, a couple of things that dawned on me with it was I think they have wanted to get Joel locked up. Obviously, young, great player that's led their team in goals. So I think that was a goal of theirs to get it done before even the offseason, which obviously they did. And I think it makes them a little bit easier. It makes it a little bit easier to maneuver and start looking at other things. Like you can get Joel's cap hit. You can plug it in now. You can work around it. So I think that's a big factor. And then I really thought this is a good motivator for all young prospects in the team system. It's like look at Joel Farabee. Look what happens when you work hard, you prove yourself, you capitalize on opportunities. You can get paid. You can get long-term security. You can be a Flyer. I think it's a really good model for all the young players in the system. This is what happens when you do the right things, and you can help the team, and you can set yourself up for an NHL contract. So I think that's the thing that the Flyers thought about.
Were you surprised at all at not even the term money-wise, but the 6 years?
I wasn't. I think it's a really good term. I really do. It keeps him through until he's 28. He'll be a 28-year-old when he can actually be a UFA. I think they've seen enough, Taryn, to believe that this kid's going to be a player. He's going to get better. And sometimes these deals become bargains too. And Taryn, I thought it was kind of crazy to think that he will be getting paid more than what Sean Couturier was paid for the last 5 years, and which will be now at the 6th year.
That's what I think.
Wow.
When it came to the numbers, that's what I think surprised people, was that not necessarily the Sean Couturier of it all. Well, maybe, but when you talk about Joel getting 6 additional years, which is truly 7 years when you factor in his current contract, you're talking about him playing until he's 28. While Sean Couturier was 28 this past season, he won the Selke Trophy at 27, and he was paid less than Joel is now. But you look at, you'd hope by 7 years from now, the flat cap will have been lifted, and that these teams will probably be spending a little bit more money. And like, to your point, if Joel plays well and that's the case, and certain guys who have comparable numbers are asking for more money because, hey, maybe they took a cut during the flat cap era or whatever, Joel does become, and this is wishful thinking, but Joel could become a bargain, to your point. $5 million for a 27-year-old. Like I said, you look at what Sean Couturier did at 27, and most people would take a $5 million Selke Trophy winner. And I know that's not Joel's game, but that's about his prime, you would think, is sort of once you get into your late 20s.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's crazy just in general. And I know everyone says this about Sean Couturier. It is crazy in general to look at Sean Couturier's contract over the past few years and compare it to literally anyone's contract. He was such it was like you went to an estate sale and you got a high-end luxury item just raffled off at an insanely low price because you didn't realize how great the quality was till you saw it up close. It is insane to think about. But I was very interested to see I think just because of Joel's age, some of the response online, it wasn't even negative. It was more just like, wow, 6 years for a guy who was in college not that long ago. But I know we'll hear from Joel a little bit later in this podcast. And I mentioned this when I got to talk to him one-on-one yesterday. So on Thursday, I interviewed Joel the 2018-2019 season. He was up at BU and the Flyers were playing the Bruins in Boston. And so they brought Joel down and we got to interview him about how his season was going and, being one of the hopes for the Flyers' future, et cetera, et cetera. And I remember saying to him then in 2018-2019, what do you think you'd like to do here? Do you think you'd rather stay at BU another year, try to win a national championship, get a little bigger, get a little stronger? Because he was small. I felt like such an obese Amazon woman standing next to Joel at that point in time, because he was, I think he was probably 18, maybe 19, depending what time of year the game was. Yeah. No, he would have had to be 18, I believe. I don't know. Now I'm getting into it too, but he was still a teenager, is my point. He was fresh out of high school, and he was just a kid. He was just a really talented kid. And you could tell he kind of was like, I think I need to get a little bit more physically mature before I make the jump. And then the next year, he's making the jump. The next year, he does well. He decides that he's going to join the Flyers, and he makes the jump. And then this year, he leads the team in goals and signs a $30 million contract. It is wild how rapidly everything progressed when it came to him. But like I said before, he really deserves it. He really takes criticism like a vet, and he holds responsibility like a veteran, and not in a way that's like condescending is the wrong word, but not in a way that's, overly self-indulgent. He just came into the league and had a professional mindset. Like, he is a pro. And again, we'll get into it in the interview, but I've talked to him a bit. I think he comes from really solid beginnings, and he talks about coming from a pretty normal middle-class family. And I think this is just so exciting for everyone around him that he realizes the gravity of the opportunity and the responsibility that comes with it. And he handles it in a really great way. And to be able to do that at 19, 20, and 21 years old, you hope that he only continues. And by 27, 28, you might be looking at a guy who's like a captain figure in the locker room to some of the younger guys, because he's been through it as a young guy. Everything is undetermined. Everything is uncertain when it comes to the future. But the potential of Joel, based on what we know, is pretty decent. So, you understand why Chuck got it done. I just was not expecting it at all.
I know it was a surprise for sure. And we will be getting into Taryn's one-on-one interview with Joel Farabee very soon on this episode. It's a great interview, and Joel talks about his upbringing, and this is kind of like how has he wondered about how far he's come in such a short period of time. And it really is. It's remarkable to think about. Fewer than 3 years ago, he was scoring his first goal at college as a freshman at BU. Last season, he leads the team in goals. Now he's got a 6-year contract extension for $30 million. Pretty darn impressive climb. And Taryn, he truly is a pro. I even remember in his rookie year, he was playing the Capitals. Big game against, obviously, a team with a lot of big names that won not long ago. And it was, I believe, on national television. So it was the first time where I think Joel Farabee looked a little overwhelmed. Like, the moment was a little too big for him. I think he was just kind of taken aback.
Not when he fought Jamie Alexiak?
Yeah.
Not that game?
Not that game. But and it was a point where he was when the puck was on his stick, he was getting rid of it right away. And it was very Joel Farabee like. And he sat the next game, and the Flyers felt like he was turning the puck over too much and just needed a time to sit back and take a game. And we talked to him, and he was like, "Hey, if I was the coach, I would have put myself on the bench too." And I'll have to double check. I don't know if he definitely sat the next game, but he was benched for almost the entirety of the third period. He didn't play in the third period, and he said, "If I was the coach, I would have sat myself too." He was very hard on himself and a pro, and he takes criticism. I think that's a reason why he's developed at the pace in which he has.
Can you hear someone playing 90s music loud outside of my apartment right now? There's just someone walking by with can you hear it? I just want to make sure people can hear it on the podcast. It's not me in my house. It's just city living.
But Taryn is a fan of 90s music. I know that for sure. But
I am. I certainly am.
Flyers Talk is brought to you by Great Railing. Stop into Great Railing for the highest quality and lowest prices on all your railing, decking, and fencing needs. Well, let's get into that interview by Taryn Hatcher with Joel Farabee, the new 6-year, $30 million guy with the Flyers. Here it is in its entirety. Hope you enjoy, Flyers fans.
All right, Joel, big extension, 6 years, $5 million over the course, or AAV over the course of those 6 years. First things first, and I know this is the question every athlete gets when they sign a big contract, so forgive me for being, not exactly creative in this, but what does a 21-year-old do when you sign a contract like that? Anything that you had in mind that you wanted to buy once you got out of that rookie contract and signed the big one like you just did today?
Yeah, I don't know if I'll buy anything in the near future. I definitely would like to, probably get a home somewhere back in Syracuse. I think somewhere probably near the lake. That was probably first on my agenda that popped in my head. But other than that, not much going on. Yeah, that's probably it. Probably just like to get a house somewhere and go from there, start my life.
What was this whole experience like for you? I know I was listening in on the press conference, and Bill Meltzer made a great point when he said, usually teams don't look to sign, a 21-year-old for as long as you were able to sign today, but definitely shores up your future here in Philadelphia. And obviously it seems like Chuck has done a lot to try to shore up this team as a whole moving forward. So what was this whole process like for you as you were looking down the barrel of hey, how many years do I want to do this here? And what do I really hope to accomplish in Philly?
Yeah, for sure. I think throughout the negotiations, you talk about a number of different scenarios and things like that, however many years. But, I think as we got down to it, 5 or 6 years was, something that I had in mind. So it's definitely nice to get it done. I think it's really good for, just to have, management here believe in me and things like that. So really looking forward to, prove what I can do in these next 6 years and, hopefully, make that this deal was a good deal.
How much did all of the off-season moves that Chuck made and just how much he tried to improve really the quality of the team after kind of how last year went down, how much did that factor into, your eagerness to re-sign here, to get something done here and get something done long term?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think just, with the signings that we do have, Coots, Sanheim, Hart, Lott signing last year, even TK's deal, I think, it just shows that those guys want to be here. And, I also want to be here, as long as I can. So, like I said, looking forward to the future. I think we have a really good core, along with some really great leadership. So these next few years should be really fun. And, I think we have a really good team to, get to make a deep run in the playoffs and things like that.
Obviously last year you took, I think everyone will acknowledge, a pretty massive step as a young player. And, whereas really one of the few bright spots in a difficult year for a lot of Flyers fans was watching how much your game grew. What do you think was the biggest contributing factor to that step that you took last year? And how have you tried to take that sort of next step coming into this season?
Yeah, for sure. I think, just going into last year, I think, you're playing every other day. So you're on the ice all the time and things like that. So I really, really got comfortable on the ice and, just my confidence with the puck and things like that. I think my rookie year, I was, pretty nervous with the puck and just didn't want to make too many mistakes. Whereas last year, I kind of felt like, I was playing my game and, just not thinking too much, just going out there and playing. So hopefully I can bring that, this next year and, hopefully obviously keep getting better and things like that. But yeah, I think the biggest thing for me is when I'm playing with confidence, and just feeling good myself. I think that's when I play my best hockey.
What did off-season training look like for you last year, and what has it looked like for you so far this season? Has it been, I know it's been drastically different for some guys, how shut down things were last summer versus this summer, but I'm wondering how different has it been for you?
Yeah, I mean, for sure during COVID, I was still able to work out in Syracuse and things like that. I had a really small group. So I was very fortunate enough to be able to get in the gym and things like that. This past summer was pretty normal summer for me. I spent probably June, July at home, just working out with my trainer back in Syracuse. And then, I've been here most of August. So definitely feel really good. We've been getting a lot of good skates and guys are, starting to slowly show up here. So we're getting everyone back and yeah, just trying to get ready for camp. I think the biggest thing right now is, just getting that conditioning back. I think I've built up a good amount of strength in my legs and things like that. So it's really just, getting the lungs back.
Speaking of building up strength, I don't know if you remember this, but back in 2018-19, I want to say, Flyers were playing in Boston, and I interviewed you during that game, and you were just like this young, kind of skinny teenager playing up in college at Boston. I wonder if you've had any time to reflect over just how far you've come in such a short amount of time, from that being just a few years ago to now you signing a contract that will really extend for the next 7 years of your life when you consider your current contract and the extension and all that you've been able to accomplish pretty quickly so far in the league.
Yeah, I mean, I think, I think when you're, just starting your pro career, you're always just maybe a little, naive or immature and things like that. Or I feel like, these last 2 years, 3 years, I feel like I really matured as a person and a player. The way I approach games now is, completely different, where I feel like I'm a lot more focused on certain things and things like that. So just trying to learn as much as I can. Obviously, when you're playing with, G, Coots, Jake last year, like they've played, almost 1,000 games apiece. So, just the wisdom they have and the way they think the game has just been so beneficial for me, just being able to, be a younger guy and learn through them. So I have to give a lot of credit to the veterans that I've played with. I've throughout my 2 years here, I think we've had some really great vets. So, just trying to learn as much as I can every day I'm at the rink.
thing that's funny to me is I think I asked you at that game, do you feel like you're ready to make the step to the pros just yet? And you were like, no, I think I need another year here at BU. And then the next year you're up with the Flyers. And then now look, a year and a half after that, you're signing a whole new contract. Just kind of one more biggie for me. What was going through your mind? Well, this is going to be a two-parter. What was going through your mind as you actually put pen to paper? And I think the other question that I always wonder, what did your parents say to you when you told them about the new contract that you had been offered?
Yeah, I mean, for me personally, once I signed, I was just kind of a little relieved. I think when you have those negotiations, they can kind of sneak up on you and take away from your game and things like that. So really pumped to just get it done before camp, and now I can just focus on hockey and focus on winning. As far as my parents, yeah, I mean, for sure they're pretty pumped. Obviously, coming from Syracuse, middle class family, to be able to sign a contract like that is awesome. So they're really proud of me, and it's really nice that I can celebrate with them.
You'll have to take them out to a nice dinner or something.
Yeah,
Now I remember
for sure.
meeting them at I think it was your first game, or maybe it was first game they've got to in Philly. They're just such great people. So I had to ask. Well, Joel, thank you so much. I appreciate you taking the time to talk to us, and congratulations again.
Yep. Thanks, Taryn. Appreciate it.
Great stuff there from Taryn and Joel Farabee. Taryn, what was your biggest takeaway from the interview? He truly is a humble kid. He doesn't say a ton sometimes, but I think that's just because he's very reserved and is very much a don't look at me kind of guy. It reminds me of Sean Couturier and Claude Giroux, two guys that are long-time Flyers right now that I think Joel Farabee kind of wants to emulate and follow. What did you think of the interview?
I would just like to correct myself really quickly, though, on the Jamie Alexiak situation. I think he wanted to fight Jamie Alexiak, and then Chris Stewart ended up fighting Jamie Alexiak, although Joel fought Pajot and Foligno that year, I believe. And I only bring this up, and I will answer your question in just a second, because I remember one of the biggest things with Joel that, other than just his youth and things he had to learn, like one of the biggest criticisms of Joel that first year from within the coaching staff, and something that he was willing to joke about, was that he would consistently pick like one of the bigger, more experienced fighters on the other team and try to fight them, especially in games where it felt like it should have been somebody's duty to step up and drop the gloves. Joel, for some reason, felt as though it should be his duty. And again, to his credit, like, I think that's him viewing himself as like, I don't want to be seen as the kid on the team. I want to be viewed as like a professional hockey player. So if somebody has to step up here, like my minutes in the penalty box probably hurt less than like if Coots dropped the gloves and he had to go sit. But I just remember, I won't say which coach, but one of the coaches was laughing with me the one day once, that saga was done over with. And he was just like, God bless the kid. He's got the heart of a lion on him, but he's just got to realize that if you're 6 inches shorter and 40 pounds lighter than the guy you're fighting, maybe don't pick that fight today.
Yeah.
And I just remember it making me laugh because I think he was just so eager. But to your point, Joel is not a me guy. Even to the point of, if you ask him about, and I did, if you ask him about being the bright spot on the Flyers last year, I asked him throughout the season in a few interviews. I asked him in this interview. He was asked by other reporters because he was the bright spot. I mean, he alone was probably the one thing that you say, this was a massive positive that I don't see a big draw, took a step, but, Joel was just a positive step in the right direction. Is Joel will always come back to, we're putting in the work this year and we hope to take another step as a team and blah, blah, blah. There's really no reveling in his own victories or successes for Joel. And, it's just one of those things where I know it's what people love about hockey players, but even when and I've talked about this, right before we did the interview, I give Joel a lot of credit because he's been interviewed through Team USA and playing at BU, and then now being a professional since he was like essentially a teenager. Joel is very media trained, and sometimes it's hard to really pull some of those unfiltered, candid moments out of him because he's learned how to do this the way the pros do it from a young age. But when you catch Joel with his guard down, he is quite funny, and you do see the parts of him where he is still a kid, but there's really no conceitedness within him still, at least not that I've caught. I'm sure there's things I don't see or whatever. But, I think I've told this story on the podcast before. I remember all the guys, we were going in there to get interviews, and I was waiting to do a one-on-one with somebody, and Jake, JVR, and Joel, I want to say somebody else was standing there, but I can't remember whose locker was there. They were talking about kind of, your death row meal, like that last meal. If you could eat anywhere for the rest of your life kind of a thing, what would you get? And Jake's a foodie, and he's talking about getting, like the steak from here and this wine from here and, all that kind of stuff. And I don't think JVR even got to say anything. And Joel, this was 2019, I believe. Joel just turns around and he's like, I can't even lie. I'd go Chipotle. And it was one of those things where it just makes me laugh. And I kind of shot him a look, and Jake looked at me and was like, you hear this? This is how you know somebody just got to the league. You're talking about Chipotle? Like, let me take you out to like Double Knot or Barclay Prime or, one of the really nice restaurants in Philly, or Butcher and Singer. And Joel is just like, no, like I could eat Chipotle every single day of my life. It's my favorite thing. And it's just a simple man. And I appreciate it about him. Maybe that's changed since then.
That's when you remember he was born in frickin' 2000. It's
2000,
like,
in 2000. And now he can drink. And that makes me feel old. It makes me feel like, I hate to say it because I'm a reporter and I try to stay professional, but I remember talking to him after his 21st birthday and being like, I feel like a babysitter. I feel like it's like, now that you can drink, what are you going to have? Yeah. And you don't want to do that, but it's just, it's wild. It's crazy to me.
It is. Yeah, it was a funny. Speaking of Jacob Voracek, a funny story I remember. It was Joel Farabee's, I think, his first training camp. Yeah, it was, because obviously he was not in camp before his freshman year at Boston. He was already at BU. First training camp, Flyers are scrimmaging, and Farabee has the puck along the wall, and he totally deked Jacob Voracek. Like made Voracek jump to the right, Farabee goes to the left. Yeah, and we're in the locker room, and people are chatting with Farabee, talking to obviously the top prospect and whatnot. And Voracek looks over at Curtis Gabriel and he's like, that kid effing broke my ankles, man. Yeah. And like, they're just laughing about it. And we talked, I ended up going up to Jake. I'm like, I got to get his insight on Joel Farabee. Jake gave him credit for the move. And that's when I kind of knew, I'm like, this kid could be pretty good. This kid's only 19 and he's pretty good. He's getting people like Jacob Voracek to kind of rave and marvel at him. So that was fun. But yeah, Taryn, I loved some of his answers to you. I thought it was cool that he wants to get a house eventually up in Syracuse, where he's from, in that Syracuse area, maybe along the lake.
A little lake house.
Yeah, he's growing up. It's true.
That's another just like, do you want to know what this kid does for a living? He's a professional hockey player. All he wants with his money is a lake house. It's the most professional hockey player move is, I just want a house on a lake for the summer. And I'm like,
well, another reminder of how young he was when during the pause before they obviously went into the bubble, a lot of players are back home, obviously in their homes where they probably own and live with their, their wives or kids. Joel was back home with
mom and dad's.
Mom and dad, and he said his mom's a real good cook. Like he was a kid, like he didn't have a house yet or a home. So good for him. It sounds like he's getting ready to, start adulthood and really being on his own. Like, that's exciting, I'm sure.
I met his parents. I said this in the interview as well, but I didn't get fully into it because I didn't want to like full-blown story time in the middle of an interview. But I met his parents. I don't know if it was his first game at the Wells Fargo Center or just the first game they could get to. I want to say it was his first game at Wells Fargo Center because I think they like got covered for work. They drove down overnight. Like I think it was a whole to-do if I remember properly. And I remember meeting his parents, and it is always interesting because like sometimes you'll meet, like I remember when I met Carter's mom and his billet, and it's like they're from, Western Canada, whole different kind of situation. And they, lived like a very true Canadian hockey life with him going to juniors and going away and all of that. When I met Joel's parents, I remember thinking like, these people are like my mom and dad's friends. Like they were so normal, nice. His mom was so excited. She was so, it was one of those moments where you go, this is a normal kid from a normal family experiencing something incredibly cool. And he will continue to experience it for the rest of his life. But it's one of those situations where you feel very related to the situation because you can tell, like, this is a mom and a dad who literally just take their kid to Chipotle and it makes stay. Like, and they're, you know, being from the Northeast, there's just that certain familiarity for sure. But I genuinely do remember thinking, like, I wish my mom was at this game because she would have sat there and talked to Mrs. Farabee for the entire game and they would have been great friends. Like, she was just like, yeah, I got covered at work, so that's great. So I could be here today. And I was like, you're so normal and adorable. And I'm so happy for you and your son's successes. And dad couldn't stop smiling. Like, it was, oh my God, it was one of the greatest. I love all the parent interviews for the kid's first game, but his was like up there just because, oh my gosh, he was just so excited. And the dad had like a Flyers connection. So he was always, you know, like somewhat a fan of the Flyers, if I'm remembering properly. Probably should have Googled the story before I started talking about it on this podcast, but I'm going from memory here.
You're good.
And I just remember the dad being like, this is so exciting. Like, I'm so glad he's on this team. And so, it's interesting because that was only 2 years ago. Like, that wasn't even that long ago. That was 2 years ago. That was like fall of 2019 or winter of 2019. And I hope he goes and buys his parents a house on a lake that they can all share.
Yeah, I know. Here we are. We're recalling our first interviews with Joel Farabee when he was drafted, development camp, freshman at BU. Like, that's it. It really, it all happened so fast because he was just such a hardworking, impressive kid. And yeah, kudos to him. I thought it was cool, Taryn, when you mentioned, you know, coming from a middle class family in Syracuse. Like, his parents must be super thrilled and proud of him. Not about the money and stuff, but like, you know what? He worked hard to get this contract, and you know, he doesn't come from like a star background or anything. Like, just like you said, middle class, hardworking family, parents. Good for him.
Well, and it's like one of those things where, and I don't know if you had this in your hometown or where you came from at all, but I think most people do at least have that one person, at least in the history of their hometown. But I remember I grew up in Delran. Obviously, Carly Lloyd is from Delran, and you know, we played for the same organizations throughout my entire life. And even I went to her trainer for a little bit. But before, like, I was going to her games when she was playing at Rutgers, when I don't think she could have really sniffed at the success she would eventually have with the national team because she was trying to break out of just being on the U21 team. And she wasn't, I mean, she was a star for our reference of what a star was, but she was nothing like she is now. And then you watch her go from, like, she swam at Tempe Chase Swim Club and she played for the Medford Strikers like I did. And she went to Delran High School and all this stuff. And it's those stories of just like a kid who wanted it really bad, worked really hard, had some sort of natural God-given ability that they really, really made the most of, which a lot of us can't say. Like, there are a lot of people who have God-given abilities in certain things, and whether it's out of reach or they just don't apply themselves or they're not passionate about it. You know, Joel's one of those kids who's just a normal Joel, and figured out what he loved and had some kind of natural gift for it or natural work ethic towards it. And to think that in his hometown where he comes from, he's probably some kid's version of, you know, what my Carly Lloyd was when she was at Rutgers and my dad would go drive me up to games, like as a middle schooler. And he's really maintained a great head about it and a great attitude about his success, which only I think makes it better. You know, he doesn't oversell like the, you know, I'm just like a kid from humble beginnings or whatever. But if you ask him about it, he's like, yeah, this is really cool for my mom and dad. I'm sure his mom and dad never dreamed of having $30 million somewhere in their family. I mean, I don't want to speak on their behalf. Maybe there's like a Rockefeller somewhere in their family, but, you know, sorry, Jordan, I feel like I'm blabbing on and on, but no, I'm very happy for him and his family because it's nice to see things like that happen to like people that just feel like people. Some pro athletes don't feel like people, even dealing day to day with them. I'm sure you feel the same way. Some of these pro athletes, they kind of don't feel like a person who experiences life the way you or I experience life. And Joel still very much has that essence about him, which is exciting because you're a normal person who has compassion. You want people to succeed. So.
Amen to that. No, perfectly said. And I think Flyers fans should be excited. I've always just thought like Joel Farabee reminds me of a Flyer. He reminds me of a Sean Couturier, Claude Drew, guys that are going to work hard, apply themselves, and do Philadelphia proud. And I thought it was really cool when he said he already has thoughts and goals and maybe staying here for his entire career. I don't think you hear that a ton from a 21-year-old who's just getting his career started, but he has proved himself so much already. He has warranted the contract, and now he's thinking those types of things. Being a Flyer for the rest of his career, I think that should excite the fan base, and I think it is. But this was fun, Taryn. It was fun talking about Joel Farabee, fun talking about the future. Loved your interview with him. That was really great, and I hope Flyers fans enjoyed it. But thank you so much for your time, Taryn. As always, great seeing you, great chatting with you. A big thank you to Ben Berry, our podcast producer and podcast guru. And
thank you to Mike Gaddy also for producing on that interview, because like I said before, that was a thing where I got a text about 15 minutes before it was announced. Hey, can you do a one-on-one at this time? I texted Mike. Mike said, we will get a recording set up, and everything went off in a matter of like moments. So I want to give a shout out to Mike Gaddy because he's always on it as well.
100%. Like Michael Gaddy, absolutely. Thank you. And Flyers fans, of course, as always, thank you for listening to the latest Flyers Talk podcast presented by Great Railing. Wherever you get your podcasts, please rate and subscribe, and we cannot wait to talk to you next time.